เราไม่ได้ปิส Oh wow, I messed this all up. I hit the wrong button. There we go. That's the right button. What is up, everyone? Welcome to Mechs on Deck. It's Wednesday, March 3rd, and we are joined by Mr. Lightning. How you doing, dude?
Hello, hello. I'm doing all right. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're excited. One of the few people that we've actually met in person that we've had on.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't remember, but I met a lot of people at that meetup.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people like rapid fire.
It just all happened so quickly.
Like, hey, you, okay, bye. I mean, that was almost a year and a half
It's like,
ago.
oh, you're that person.
Yeah.
And then you forget, and then you're like, oh, that's right, I know you.
I have this video of us doing karaoke, and it's so funny because like there's I am you are you and El Baron, there's Huey and Olivia and
Oh,
Nebula
man.
sitting there, and Cyrus and I. It's like there's all these people. Like
times.
half of them we didn't really have any relationship with
Yeah.
up until because it was just kind of like Huey knew us and he invited us along. We're like, all right, sweet. And then Squid 60 finally landed in Australia. It was in Tokyo for a hot minute. Japan was holding the Squid 60 hostage for a while.
Oh, wow.
He's going worldwide.
Yeah.
That will be, I think, the most traveled of the squids, I would assume. One of the two. I think there's two in Australia. Doxed two people in Australia.
Those two owners, that's it.
Those two owners. But yeah, welcome Lightning. If you guys have not checked out his channel, !guest, he does great content and amazing pictures. Check out his Instagram as well. He takes fantastic photography. I was really moved by the Squid 60 pictures. And good choice of keycap set, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. I actually love GMK Denim. It's such a sleeper set. I actually didn't buy it on group buy because I actually just didn't have the cash at the time. And then I kept kicking myself for it. I was like, I should have just scrunched it up. I should have just done it. And, after it came out, I was like, I knew it was going to come out good because Tom Berry has a good eye for color. First of all, I have a very strong conviction that like he's good with this stuff. And then I saw the samples, I saw the actual stuff come out, and I was like, I have to have it. Yeah. So I bought it from Originative.
There it is.
Like the pre-order price or whatever, it's like $180 or whatever that is. It's like, okay.
That's not bad though. I mean, it's a decent base kit though. Like it's not like
no, it's a chunky base kit, and it has like all those cool novelties, like denim novelties, which I really like.
I'm not a huge fan of them personally, but I respect them because they are some of the most on theme novelties that exist out there. Like there's not many that really go that far into it. So Seether Zero, thank you. I hope you enjoy your first live stream, and thank you for watching all of the VODs.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Before we get started, quick shout out to our awesome sponsors, OmniType, Canon Keys, and Project Keyboards, as well as our awesome partners, Zap Cables, Type Beast, and Smith & Rune. We'll hear more from them later. Lightning, if you've watched any of our content, we have a fast four. So we're going to start off with the top 4 favorite switches.
Top 4 favorite switches. My first love is Topre. 45 gram personally. I do prefer silenced if possible, but otherwise it's actually okay as long as you have lubed Topre. It's pretty good. Number 2, I will probably say a good cherry linear. It doesn't matter whether it's a red or a black or whatever that is. As long as it has like a smooth, bottom housing and the stem, it's all good. I usually spring swap those to 60 or 65 gram, anywhere in between. And just put a film, right, and some lube. For lube, I normally prefer Tribosys 3204, or actually anything lighter than that. I actually try to avoid lubing with 205 for my own switches as much because I find it a little bit too heavy. So it makes it feel like I'm just using I'm just feeling the lube. Yeah. That's number 2. Number 3 for me, I really like Ergo Clears in general, or soft tactiles. I would say like between Ergo Clear and MX Browns, like MX Browns with slightly heavier springs. So like maybe like 65 gram MX Browns that are lubed. and decently smooth. I think between Ergo Clears and those, it's kind of in between. Like I like both of them a lot. And then fourth, I say either Orange Alps, SKCM Orange Alps, or Buckling Spring, probably. Yeah.
There it is. I don't think we've ever had 45 gram Topra on here. 35
Yeah. I'm a
is
45.
the usual.
Yeah. 55 wouldn't be the usual, right? Because it's
I
the
would say
heavier
it's
one.
35.
Oh wow.
I don't know.
I think
From what I've of the people that I
35
talk
is
to, a
light.
lot of people say 35.
the
But
those are
35 is super light.
yeah, the super light ones. A lot of people like those, but I
Wow.
think 55 is normal. And then heavy. I don't how big. How heavy is heavy?
Who is that?
like 85. I don't know.
I think
that number out of my
Topre, like,
ass.
yeah, I think like 45 gram Topre bottom out is like 65 gram ish, and then 55 gram Topre is closer to like 80 gram bottom out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is.
Interesting.
It's
Have you tried
the pushback? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like significant. Go ahead.
Have you tried the Penguin switches yet?
I tried like a sample. So I kind of like the general idea of them, but I probably want to mod them a bit. I found the spring to have a bit of an unpleasant sound at first, so I probably would either swap it or just like lube that with oil or something like that. And then I've been debating like what I would do with if I had a full batch of them. But first impressions were overall good. I haven't bought a full batch yet. I just have a lot. I just have a lot of other switches to run through, and I just don't want to keep accumulating. Look, I have so many switches, and I just like keep accumulating them.
Yeah, it's a lighter tactile, a soft. I like that term, soft.
Yeah,
tactile.
soft. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I can get behind this. It's, to me, it's a slightly better lilac. In my, I do think they need to be filmed, and I sent a lot of expletives to Eric the other day because I hate film. I've never filmed. I've never liked the idea of filming, but I was like, no, this is one where the top housing legitimately is a bit loose, and you can feel it.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think for me, my pet peeve is when you can hear it, like when you can actually hear the top housing rub, and it's not even a click. It's like it's like nails on. It's like nails on a chalkboard kind of feel. It's like, I just can't do it.
I did some switch testing where I tested a whole bunch of like basically every tactile switch that I have. And I have a couple of the OG T1s.
They're so bad.
From the KBD fans variant. And they are awful at like exactly what you're saying. You can hear it. It's just like, you go from this and I put it right next to like a lilac, which is basically the same switch, just obviously the new variant, new molds, a year of, hey, we know what we're doing now. And it is just night and day. It is just crazy how terrible these are looking back.
It's funny. I put them in a board, and after a week I was like, I'm desoldering this right now. and they've been sitting in a drawer just taking up space. I'm like, I mean, springs, and I have found more and more how important the leaf is on a spring or on a switch.
Oh yeah,
because if it's a weak leaf, like that's what my biggest issue with the Glorious Pandas. As a stock switch with the stock spring, it's great. It's fine. It does exactly what it needs to do.
Yeah,
but the modifiability of a Glorious Panda starts really, you can tell that they cheaped out on the leaf, and it's like, well, they sell it as is and you have to judge it as is, but when you're going into modifying, I'm like, that's fine. Like, it's not my favorite, but
yeah, absolutely. Apologize if you hear some background music. Some neighbors tend to blast music sometimes in the evenings, and then you just hear it through the walls. But it's one of those New York City things. People who come to my stream know this very well. It happens every so often. Sometimes it happens in the middle of the day, but yeah,
absolutely.
They love karaoke, by the way. So you can hear them singing.
The next up on the Fast Four will be your top 4 favorite key sets.
Let me think. Okay, well, basically, the one that inspired CRP Peacock. So like the 3000 SAT, which is going to be the Czech layout with the blue sub legends on the front. I mean, it's like the German layout, right? Blue sub legends on the front. Beautiful. I love that beige set. So I love beige in general, but that's probably the one that I like the most. Second, I really like GMK Honeywell. I think it's one of those colorways that I like the original run the most, I think. I know that they changed a bit of the modifiers, and there's also like, text only mods, and the red was different and all that, but I like the original run best. Like bright, I like the bright red and like the slightly lighter gray mods. My third one, let me think. I would say, oh man, this is a very tough question for me because I have a lot of key sets, but at the same time, I like so many of them. The GMK Dolce, probably. It's a classic. I mean, like white and black Dolce and beige, obviously for me are like, it's like always go tos. But I really always like the look of GMK Dolce. Like when I see like GMK Dolce on like the old one, right? Not the modern Dolce. When I see it on like a black keyboard, on like a dark gray keyboard, just gives me the feels, man. I'm just like, oh, that looks good. And I know that it's a warm gray, but it's actually the warm gray that complements the dark color of the case so well. And sometimes when it has like a red plate or like a colored plate underneath, it pops really nicely against the keycap colors. But if I didn't mention like those classic three, I would still say like GMK Hyperfuse Round 2, the one with a very bright, it's like white alphas and a kind of semi-darker purple. So it's not the Hyperfuse Origins that has like a grayer color. That one was a long time favorite for me. Like I got it like back in 2017, and I've had it since. It's my set's super shined up. And then last one, it's tough.
I think that was 4.
Oh, I think that's 4. Yeah. But
I mean, you can
some
give
mentions,
us a 5th. I just
there's a few. I mean, I love Taro. I think
Mm.
that's one of the best sets out there.
Yeah. It's a fantastic set. I'd love to have them on, but we stream at the same time. And it's just like an awkward like toss up.
Yeah.
Are you going for Hand or Bite Beige? Is that up your alley?
Probably not actually. I have, so I have Hand or Bite right here. I have the set here, right here. But
why get beige when I have the OG?
I like the striking colors of the original set. I think for beige, I actually just prefer just the more muted, or I mean more low key look that beige has. Like beige sets tend to have, even if like with sub legends and whatnot. But yeah, I think the Hand or Bite Beige might not be for me. Yeah.
So next up is your top 4 favorite keyboards.
Okay, well, I mean, the HHKB has to go in there because it was my first love in keyboards. Like, I went to my first meetup and my first ever big exposure to mechanical keyboards back in December 3rd of 2016. I remember the date. It happened at 12:30 all the way to 4:30 at Georgetown University in this small library room. And I remember coming back from that meetup and I ordered an HHKB that same day. Because I knew I had to have it. and then I got like a Nova Touch and more MX stuff later on. So the HHKB has to go on there. For me, it's something I always come back to. I think my second one that I personally have like a lot of attachment for is the TGR JMV2. In my case, I really like it with the half polycarb plate. It's like incredibly soft, and it's very bouncy feeling. But I have a sentimental value towards that board because I waited a long time in that group buy, and then at the time like Yutsi offered to build it, so like he sent the build with it. So I have a lot of sentimental value for that board. And probably the next one would be the what was that? I was about to say something, just like crossed my what was I going to say? Oh, the Juby by Ion Keyboards is a recent favorite. It's a 60% with 2 macro columns on the left. And it just feels, it's plateless, It's built like with PCB only. Mine has Nolives, and it just feels and sounds great. Like it's such a nice board. It has a bit of that OG look from like the cherry front chin or front lip, so that's been a recent favorite. And then so that's 3, right? I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Fourth one's actually tough. It's a kind of a toss up for me.
Yeah. Fourth ones are always tough because it's like you pick your 3, and then it's like which one do you axe?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, there's a few odd like mentions that I kind of would put on the same level and at the fourth, and it's probably like the LZGH V2, which has that big brass bar that's like cylindrical as a leg to prop it up. I think it's just so unique. And it's like relatively round looking, like on the corners and stuff, but I think it's pretty unique. That one, along with the like anything that's like the koala, which is kind of like has like very low profile, like very low angle and like low height, and has that like side like curve. I really like that look. I think those 2 are probably on the 4th position. Yeah. So like it's like KFE or koala, and then LZGHV2. Yeah.
Man, classic boards
sounds
in there.
Yeah, you were just talking about how you wanted a new keyboard, Eric. I think it's time you get an HHKB. You've been talking about it for like almost a year and a half now.
And I was thinking about this as you talked about it back in 2016. That was before either of us were really in the hobby, but that was like a time when even like group buy boards were fairly inconsistent. Where they're not like what they are now, where the board comes out and it's good. Like people were trying a lot, and that was like one of the few things you could get. Yeah, I've been toying with the idea of getting one of the new HHKBs just to give Topra its rightful shot, because I've never really given it other than like meetups and stuff. So I might need to jump on.
Yeah. The new ones are fantastic.
Yeah.
They already come really good stock. Like the mods actually are kind of looped decently well, and like they actually sound pretty good overall. And once you loop them, it's it's like a night and day difference for Topre, I would say. But the new series of HHKBs is really, really good compared to Pro 2. Yeah.
Might have to snag one up. But the last question of the Fast Four is the one that has nothing to do with keyboards. Your top 4 favorite foods.
Curry.
I
like
literally
curry.
just had curry.
Yeah, curry. Like any kind of curry is great. Like I mean, anywhere starting from like dal all the way to like tonkatsu curry. Like Japanese style. Everything's good about curry. Thai curries are great. Curry's one. Number 2 is probably ramen. I love noodles, but ramen just hits a spot that it's always yearning for that broth, that rich flavor of the broth and the noodles. Third is probably fried chicken. I love fried chicken. There's nothing like fried chicken. I don't need a lot of I don't need to dress up the chicken, as in like I don't need buffalo. Just fried chicken. Just good old fried chicken. Like I can have sauce on the side, but just fried chicken. And the 4th one, probably tacos. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Mexico, and so I have a fondness for tacos. But you can make a taco out of pretty much anything. So, yeah.
I mean, breakfast tacos, steak tacos, fried chicken tacos. Have you ever been to Torchy's?
No.
They're famous. They're known for their popular tacos, a fried chicken taco. Yeah, it's amazing. It is so good. I get it every single time.
Amazing.
It's so good.
It's called the trailer park, dude.
The trailer park, and then you can get it trashy.
Ooh.
And they pour queso over it. Take off the lettuce.
Oh man.
Queso on
Take
top.
off lettuce, queso, some pico in there. Ooh, so good. I can go to just had Torchy's like a week ago.
Yeah.
Um,
So I'm a big
Yeah.
like regular like like Mexican tacos, like just like meat, onion, cilantro, salsa, right?
boom.
On like two like on a like a double small corner tortilla.
Yeah, street tacos,
Um
like actual
yeah, like
street
street tacos.
tacos.
Yeah, like I like regular tacos. I mean that's what we call tacos normally,
Yeah.
but I don't mind when people like change it up and like use like bigger tortillas and like put all the queso and like all the queso, lettuce and all this pico de gallo and all that good stuff, right? It's a completely different kind of food, but it still is a taco, so
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't mind it.
There's a
It
time and
goes
place
in
for
here
each.
and I feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
all that matters.
We have a couple questions for you in the chat. Streaking Bison asks, "What lube do you use on Topra?" Neither of us have really messed around
Oh
with
yeah.
lubing Topra. So
So when I first started, I used to use the Krytox Thin like blend, but basically the Krytox Thin blend is essentially like 205 and 105 mix, like in a specific ratio. I don't know what the ratio is because it's supposed to be a formula. That's well, they're selling it, so obviously they're not gonna tell you exactly what it is. But nowadays, if I recommend something, I'll just say try Tribosys 204, 3204 on the sliders for each of the Topris stems. Not the stems themselves, but the rails of the housing.
Mhm.
And then I would say 205 for the wires of the stabilizers. That'll do wonders. Yeah.
a Menti boy first live stream. Man, got two people now. First live stream. Welcome.
Welcome.
Got Lightning joining us. Lightning Keyboards. Hit exclamation point guest. Go check out his channel over there. The other question was Diego taco meat.
Wait, sorry, what was that?
What is the best taco meat? I guess what is your
Uh,
recommendation?
Tripa. Tripe. Well done too. Has to be like crispy.
Mhm.
And then you pour a bunch of salsa on it, and as the salsa has that wetness to it, and then you bite, crisp. Oof, delicious. And it's a strong flavor, so it's really really good. But that's my favorite, hands down.
That's a little
And then
out
like
there for some people.
pastor and pastor and lengua, which is beef tongue, would be my second
Lingua
and
is
third choices. Yeah,
Lingua's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
Lingua's
that
great.
stuff
It's
just
hard to
melts in your
find
mouth.
people that find places
Yeah.
that sell it.
Yeah, there's a bit of a there's the whole like
The
people,
stigma
I mean,
over eating stomach
yeah,
and tongue.
stigma over yeah, and then like obviously like health inspection and that kind of stuff. So I think that's why a lot of stands also avoid it, because they will get the B or the C and so.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm like, if I see the B or the C, I'm like, oh, that place is
this
probably
place,
good.
this
place
Gotta mix up a little bit of that dirt from the outside, It's part of the flavor, part of the spice.
You find that the stand that's like a pop-up stand in a parking lot, or like it's attached to a gas station. There's just like three old ladies just like wrapping up the tacos. You know you're in the right place.
It's my the other one too is if you have to point at the picture.
Yeah.
A lot of us in Texas know enough Spanish
Yeah.
probably to at least order tacos. But
Yeah.
if you're it's kind of the like this you're like you're gonna get something good. So there's a place right by us that was attached to a gas station. It was fucking amazing. They had the best goddamn tamales ever. And then they moved into a regular restaurant and the place went to shit. It was like, I guess maybe the fumes from the gasoline was just adding some extra flavor in there. Who knows? But
that's also the whole like get up of like the rush of being in front of on the streets versus like sit down, right? It's completely different pace. So
Dude, yes.
maybe it's part of that too.
Some of the best tacos I've ever had were in a parking lot that had been basically converted into like a Mexican and Cuban like festival in Miami. And there was just trucks like everywhere. And they had no idea what I was saying. I was just pointing at things on the menu like
you're just like that.
And it's like it's like one of those places where they just have like they're doing elotes and they just like have everything just out, and it's just like some lady that's just doing it with the full corn on the cob, just like making it, and they just put the giant corn on the cob in
that's
the cup.
the good stuff.
Yeah. That was
the best place I've had was in South Dallas. It was literally like on a dirt road, and it was a taco truck that was on cinder blocks, And I
Mhm.
went up, and they had the spinning meat. You know, they just go up and
Mhm.
hack some off, and like they hold the
Yeah.
taco, just hack it off into their hand, and then they had pico and hot sauce. Like you put that on,
Yeah,
and they're
on the
just
side.
like
Yeah,
on the side, and
that's
then
the
they just
way.
it
Yeah.
literally it's just like $2. Here's your taco. It's like, all right, sweet.
Yeah, there's a
And
spot in LA that I really really like. That's just like that. It's like next to like a small grocery store or something. It's like one of the garages. I mean, one of the parking lots too. It's like right next to it, and it's the same thing. You just go and
Yeah.
order, and all the salsas are like lined up in
lined
front of your
up
truck.
and
Yeah, and then
not labeled
you
or
just take whatever you
anything. You
want.
just pick a
Yeah,
color and hope that's good.
yeah. Yeah.
Rob
I mean, normally
27
they go
Shred,
by
we may have
spices. Yeah, like
Rob
spice
27
level.
Shred, we may have gone to the same taco. It was just
Oh man,
it
good stuff.
looked so like just run down and messy, but I was like, this is the best damn taco I've had in my entire life. I ordered like
Yeah.
3 more.
Yeah.
But let's talk about keyboards.
Yeah,
So
Sounds good.
so Lightning, you've been in the hobby longer than I would say a giant chunk of the rest of the hobby. You've been streaming for a good while now. You have a what some would call probably borderline crippling addiction to bongo cats. And-
Yeah. I mean, I would say artisans in general, but bongos have had a big representation lately because they're very nicely done and I like them.
But yeah, you put on absolutely beautiful streams and take even better pictures. So welcome
you.
to Mechs on Deck. Thank you for
Thank you.
being flexible while we froze to death.
Oh no, I mean, of course.
That
you know, you
that
have to
message
attend to
still
those.
just it makes me laugh. I was like, hey man, I'm gonna have to cancel. Oh, are they good? Like, yeah, like we just don't have power.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, you better take care of yourself.
What's funny is that Wednesday I had power but no internet and no water. So it was like
Oh,
sick. Couldn't even do the show if I wanted to.
mm.
So,
Oh man,
but
I'm glad.
but
I'm
welcome,
glad that's over.
welcome to the
Yeah,
stream. So you
thank
got
you.
started very early. So how did you get into the keyboard hobby?
Yeah. So as I was saying, well, I guess the sort of the long story short is that I met a guy who actually I met this guy like I was interviewing for schools at the time because I was working. So I took a business trip to interview for a school, and then in that interview I met this guy who actually took the same flight as me back from the interview to my at the time I was living in the DC area, Washington DC area, and as I like asked him questions like, oh, like, you know, like maybe we can like ride share for like depending on where you live, like in DC, right? Like from the airport. And he happened to live like right across the street from me. And he also happened to work at the building right across the street from me. Like like across my work building. And so we got
Small
close,
world,
obviously.
man.
Right. Well, I was like, this is crazy. This is a crazy coincidence. And so one like Saturday, he was like, hey dude, so I'm in this like keyboard thing. I'm like, oh, I've heard of that. Like I had a college friend who kind of like did the whole grab bag thing or whatever. And like, you know, the like keycap grab bag stuff, right? And then he was like, you know, I saw on Reddit that there's this meetup. It's the first meetup in this area. You wanna check it out. And so I went there and it blew my mind. It just blew my mind. All the options, all the colors. I mean, it was a small meetup too. Like it was maybe like 30 people, 40 people at most. In a small library room at Georgetown University, and like it was, but like, you know, when I tried like loop topre, when I tried like a smooth linear, I was just like, how is it possible that I've been using a computer for, you know, decades and I know nothing about these, like nothing. Like maybe someone told me that there's like, you know, cherry mix blue, red, and brown, but this is crazy. And so I went back home and I started looking into it. That's how I got in. At first I was just interested in getting, you know, as like everyone, a couple boards that I could use for work and like at home. But then I became more interested in the technical side of things because I love the tinkering aspect. So I started like a friend actually asked me a favor and he was like, hey, you want to build this for me? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? You know, I used to do it for free for like several years or 2 years almost. And so would just build for a friend because he didn't have a soldering iron, let's say, and I bought that equipment because I was like, yeah, it's been a while since I soldered, but I want to do it. Like I want to learn this stuff. I want to do this stuff. And I also had an interest in maybe like doing PCBs or something because I have an EE background, but never ended up doing that. I would have had to learn everything from scratch. So I was just like, that's too much of a time sink at the time. I was busy, and so yeah, I got into the building thing, and then artisans kind of came in later as I got to meet people into them and them telling me like their accounts of like why they do it, and it convinced me that like I could treat it as like it's kind of some like form of art, and
Yeah.
that's eventually I got interested in that, but in a more like creative side or different way of things. Yeah.
So
I mean, it
it's
literally is art collection.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, people consider a lot of the time like pop art, right? Because it's like,
Mhm.
oh, I want this Pokemon looking cap, encapsulated or whatever. They sell it on Drop or Etsy or whatever, like a bigger storefront kind of location, and then you buy it and you're like, oh, that's cool. Like it's a nice flair to this one look at like the escape key or something, or
Mhm.
like this enter key. But later on, as I start to see like all the sculpting and the handmade casting, all that stuff, that all the effort that went into it, I really started to appreciate it, and I kind of treated it more like just regular sculpting, and more like just like just like going to see a painting at a museum. In the end, it's a more personalized experience because these people are actually approachable. You can talk to them about what they do, and they'll tell you about it. You can't do that for like famous painters or like whatever, right? So I really appreciate that. It was that first hand approach that I had, like I got to have with some artisan makers, that like completely changed my view on them,
Mhm.
because I started realizing like they actually cared so much about it. Like the first few people I met was Kudos of Key Collective and Binge of Hungerwork Studio, both of them masters of their craft, especially now. Uh, but uh, but yeah, like they're so passionate for the craft, and so I started appreciating it, and I was like, I want to support what you do, even though at the time I didn't have much saved up or anything, but I was like, every so often I want to support the work you do, and so I got into that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to how I grew a lot more of an appreciation for artisans once we did Quarantine on Deck last year, and we really got to kind of dive in deep to their processes and how they came about, their sculpts and the caps that they make, and it really does make you appreciate what they do and give you a new understanding to the work that they put into creating that art, and it's really cool. It's really cool to see.
Yeah.
Um, I did have a question though about because I feel like we don't. It's not often that we get someone who has been in the community as long as you have and done a lot of things and seen the community
Hmm.
grow. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I just want to ask, like, what is that like as someone that got in at the end of 2016 into 2017?
Yeah.
That it seems so like not that long ago, but in reality, in terms of the hobby, it was in a
Oh yeah.
vastly different place.
A literally lifetime
Yeah,
difference.
like back then, GMK sets many times would not hit MOQ. Even if they did, it was just MOQ, 150 or 250, for example. And we had struggling buys, like SP was also prohibitively expensive at the time too. Sometimes, um, and even back then, people were telling me back then the hobby is so much bigger than it used to be, right? But for me, I was like, well, it seems like it's just growing, like, just taking baby steps. It's insane to me how we have like dozens of vendors, and like, we have over a handful of them just in the United States, basically
Mhm.
per region, right?
Yeah.
Like you have like one in the South, one in the East Coast, two in the West Coast, whatever, right? And like people like have like there's this whole like liability thing with group buys now. It's crazy. And so it feels like it's been I appreciate like a lot of what that change has brought into hobbies as far as accessibility goes and resources go. Like I think there are just so many, like people will complain about how everything's out of stock or whatever, because there is a supply demand kind of challenge here. Obviously you know, further worsened by COVID and like all this stuff, right? Working from home. But there still are options available all the time. And it's no longer just modifying a pre-built or getting into the group buy that's coming up, like a popular maker, let's say like Duck, the designer from Korea. He would do maybe like one group buy a year, two, maybe, and you have to wait until then. The interest checks were slow because people actually put feedback into them,
They
and
mattered.
they had to like integrate it. And they have to integrate. Nowadays, like I see interest checks are just advertisements, like, which is the reality, right? They're almost full-fledged, like, made products. And so because there is a baseline already, there's a standard. Like, you go into an interest check with no renders, that interest check is gonna get ignored right away. Like, first impressions matter so much now, right? Like, you acquaint yourself with the wrong people remember that stuff.
Yep.
Like, there's a lot of that networking aspect too that happens. Before, that wasn't like, there was a bit of that, but it was not as like, it was not as specific. Like, now there's very distinct communities, and like obviously, like, the community lives on Discord now. Back then I would browse a lot of RMK and Geek Hack. I've read hundreds of pages of Geek Hack. And that was just out of interest of wanting to like catch up with what's happened. But even then, by then, I was already too late into Geek Hack. Like, it was like the people who normally use Geek Hack just to hang out, now they're like in off topic. Now they might be in some of the media threads. When things get posted, they kind of come up and they're like, oh, cool keyword, whatever. But, or like, they used to participate in like interest checks and group buy for that and like threads, right? But now that's not quite the case. Like, now ICGBs is like this big thing, and then the rest is like super, super small. Like, Geek Hack as a whole has really diminished. And so it's a very different place. I'm glad about the growth, but I also feel like there are growing pains that we're currently facing. Like, obviously there is like people coming in from different hobbies expecting very different things.
Yeah.
People kind of demanding, for example, like higher production when it's not possible like in terms of logistics. People coming in with new ideas about business that might not be applicable because essentially, like, a lot of these businesses are like a mom and pop or family sort of driven, essentially, right? And like, it's just like, it's we're still doing that transition, and we still have ways to go there. And I've seen that change a lot over the years. And meetups are still super fun. I love going to meetups. I miss them, of course, but that's probably my, like, if I say like top 3 favorite things to do in a year related to keyboards, one is going, like, planning for meetups and going to them. Like, I gain so much out of them. And like, so many friends that I like still talk to
Dude,
on a daily basis, pretty much. Yeah.
we were so freaking excited to go to KeyCon last year.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
like
the Denver one, right?
Yeah, that was going to be like a huge thing for
Literally
us.
every single person.
Yeah, like, we were going to get to meet a whole bunch of people. It's obviously like one of the biggest meetups of the year. And the fact that it didn't quite happen in the same capacity that initially wanted to, it just sucks. Hopefully we can get back to having meetups and we can start getting out and meeting people and seeing, because it feels like the meetups have almost become less about the boards and more about just hanging out and having a good time with people.
Yeah.
The keyboards are like kind of the second thing.
Yeah, and I've noticed also, it's a lot of the time because of meetups, a lot of these communities started forming. Like, whether you have like, like when Top Clack kind of started to come up, that was like, what, 2017, right? Like, over the course of 2016, 2017. I think like the NorCal meetup of that year was really big. Was like the first really big meetup aside from the, I guess, Seattle, like summer Seattle meetup, right? That was like when like Rama came to the US and whatnot. Like, obviously at the time, like, there was like J Chan, Key Clack, very popular with like GMK Hydro and Rama M65, all that stuff. And like like Quake Games and Apolitary, and well, I guess Apolitary wasn't around, but Vector wasn't around, but like Huey and stuff, right? And they helped centralize a lot of that community, like a lot of the communities. They help like at least group people up and making them feel a lot more cohesive about like their presence in the community. But I think the lack of meetups is slowly going to show it's going to show the effect as like how a lot of these communities are going to become more fragmented, or you're going to go to a meetup maybe after things are more normal, and you'll notice how like there's going to be like vast chasms of like understanding about the hobby in like big swaths of the attendees like to the meetups, right? But I mean, now it's like if we had a big meetup right now, I would expect a few thousand people show up.
Oh yeah, hands down. It
Like,
didn't
no
matter
doubt.
where it was either. What's this is what's kind of crazy to me. Now, granted, there are, let's say there's 1,000 spots for a place that would do a meetup. I think that would be a bad idea. I think any meetup from this point on needs to basically rent out a place that can fit 5 digits of people, just because of how many people are in the hobby, but also because meetups are great, but like kind of what Eric was touching on was you wind up running into the problem of, well, all these people, there's hundreds of us are not going because we want to go type on keyboards. We're going because we want to go see people. But the other part of that is keyboard meetups are so vital to beginners going in and testing out things. At the end of the day, the important part of a meetup, in my opinion, it's awesome that you get to hang out with people, but the important part of a meetup is people getting to go in and try things without having to buy expensive things.
Yeah.
And that becomes tricky when you have so many people showing up that are like, Eric and I were like, we're not even bringing keyboards. Like, fuck it. Like, I don't care. Like, we'll take some sweet B-roll shots, but like, I might type on a few, but and it's easy for the three of us to say, right? We're very fortunate that we get to build a lot of different boards,
right?
But not everybody is like. But 99% of the hobby doesn't get to touch the same amount, and so there are obviously a lot of people that would want to go just so they can go, I just want to see the things. Like, I mean, between Osiris and I, there are lots of boards and key sets we've never even seen before. It wasn't until recently that we were finally able to get our hands on a Satisfaction 75.
I mean,
so it's just,
I think I got to try a Sat 75 most recently just because Upas was nice to send one of his prototypes just for me to check out. And I was like, thanks. Otherwise I would never seen it unless I attended a meetup, right? And like in my case, what I really like about meetups is actually the smaller meetups, or when the meetups are limited to the region, like to people who live in the region, because it brings those people together, and like these people like form groups, right? And in my case, after I moved here to New York City, I would host mini meets. Just invited maybe like 10 people, 15 people, and had mini meets here. And many of them I talk to very often. They're like very close friends of mine. But like for me, like I really, really like that experience. Right? It's like more one-to-one interaction. Yeah, it's about the keyboards, but it's really just about bonding with these people directly, and also just the fact that they live in your area. It's like you can do way more after the meetup too, or even
you can save so much on shipping,
of course. and so like I kind of feel like if our meetups were to resume, it would be nice that any organizers thought of maybe having a meetup that's local only, like basically like open to locals, so that those people, so that all the newbies and stuff too in that area can come in and basically be in like be educated too, right? By people who are more experienced, tell them like, hey, like I'm in the area, so if you need help with this, you can just hit me up, or let me tell you about this.
And those are the meetups where you're like, where Osiris and I, because we wanted to do something like that. We literally planned for something in March of last year to do like a little local meetup. And then we're like, well, we can't do that anymore. But that's the meetups where you bring out everything, right? You're like, I'm bringing every single day, because I can drive at one, but I'm bringing every damn board I have, because you want people to test all of the things. And between Osiris, between our just in our little Dallas group, we probably have enough to fill up an entire row of tables that some people might never get a chance to try. So the local meetups, I'm really hoping will kick
Yeah.
back when it is safe to kick back into.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, maybe like lots of smaller ones,
yeah.
like scattered during the year with a different set of attendees. Like that's fine, but at least they'll promote like people who really need those meetups, to come in and at least get to check out stuff in a more, I guess, less hectic kind of scene too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because one of the coolest things that I saw done at a meetup was at the Seattle meetup, not last year, but in 2019.
Yeah.
Where they basically got all the people who were new together, and they basically took them on a tour to certain people's tables. So like they could go to
Mhm.
Brian or Quakems, and he would
Oh,
talk
wow.
about all of his boards, talk about what they are. And I thought that was really cool. And I think one aspect that meetups does
Mhm.
help with, and I'll be interested to see what the effects are once things do come back, once meetups do come back, is I feel like there's a lot of progression that happens in keyboards in terms of new designs, people getting inspired for things
Yeah.
when they can get out to meetups. So I'm hoping that once meetups do start happening, we start seeing some cool new ideas that come out from people who maybe went to a meetup and saw a board that they had never seen before, never had the chance to try, and they're like, I really like that, but what if
Mhm.
we did this a little bit differently?
Yeah. Likewise with like collaborations, right, between people who have been doing stuff, it's much easier to discuss this in person. And so,
Yeah.
um and like with the actual product in hand, right, like if you already
Mhm.
have a sample of something, right, um like I do think that a lot of my itch for a lot of keyboards that I haven't owned was really gone because I managed to go to these meetups just to check them out. And then, it was not about concluding, let's say, that keyboard is about the same as the one I have or whatever. It's more so like I think it's great that this other keyboard owner has this is like their main keyboard, right? They're like, it's like a daily driver, and I could see that at like basically at its like peak level, right? Because normally like people really put in a lot of work towards like whatever their main keyboard, daily driver is, right? And so like you check it out, and then you're like, oh, come back, and maybe it's like, oh, might try those switches. That combo is pretty sick.
Mhm.
Things like that. You get ideas like that. For example, I mean, when I buy any keyboard, actually, the moment I click on buy this keyboard, right, like on like add to cart or whatever, I already have more or less. I already have the key set and just the overall look in mind
Mhm.
already. If I don't have that image, I hesitate to buy it because it means I'm unsure. And so like I'm essentially gonna end up wasting that money because I'm gonna keep thinking about this and just go in circles and then eventually probably not like the thing that I buy. So overall, like I try to always have a plan for something before I purchase. Also just for measures of self-control. Like as far as budget and that goes. It's like a rule that I have set for myself. It's like if you
Mhm.
can't find one or two uses for it directly, then don't buy it.
Yeah.
Like don't spend that money. You don't need it. Yeah.
That was literally
Smart.
like one of our first YouTube videos was like planning out your build. Because
Yep.
if you're point and clicking on a board and you don't have an idea for what you want to do with it, it's like maybe you could live without it. Maybe it's not good enough for you to do right now. Like if you're not getting excited enough to, you know, be so stoked about the possibility of owning this board that you're like, I already know what I want to put in it, what caps I want to put on it, then maybe you don't really need it.
Mhm. But meetups, I'm also curious because meetups have such an effect on aftermarket, right? Like you
Oh yeah.
have when you see stuff,
Perceived value changes a lot.
well, it's like if Bento had shipped after COVID lockdown, I don't think Bento would be that popular because Bento is so hard to take a
Oh
photograph
yeah.
of. But Bento
Mhm.
is an amazing looking set in person. Same
Mhm.
with,
Mhm.
I mean, it didn't have as bad, but Striker is another set that looks way
Mhm.
better in person than it does on pictures.
Yeah.
And that's something that with key sets and keyboards and type on,
Yeah.
you get to feel the differences between some of
Yeah.
these keyboards.
Yeah. I mean, this
And
set, I know people say it's ugly, but in person, it's so much, like it's so rich That I think it grows on a lot of people who own it. I actually, when I purchased it, I was like, oh yeah, collecting factor. There's that OG whatever collecting factor, and I'm just gonna put it aside and then never gonna put it on a keyboard. I'll put it on a keyboard just for memes, right? Just for fun, taking
Just for
pictures.
pics. Yeah.
Cool. But once I had it in hand and I got to like compare the pics that I saw and like this in person, I was like, oh, these colors are very striking and they actually don't look that bad. Although yes, it's a crazy mess of colors, but
So, but no, I mean, like, I think like Zycos probably wouldn't be that much of a thing. Like we would use them. People in Dallas might use them.
yeah,
But I was able to take those to NorCal and show them to IMEURU. And once IMEURU got a hold of them, he was the one that kind of really kickstarted that becoming a thing. And
same with vintage.
Vintage
like
blacks,
Alps.
like Alps boards, any newer switches I think are the other huge factor there, because if you like a switch just off of the first 10 seconds using it, you're probably going to go home and go, okay, how do I get these?
Write it down or something.
Let me write this down and like start buying that like on my phone at the meetup. Like these are great. And
sometimes like vendors are there too.
Yeah, and you're like, cool. Like I'm going to go talk to the person that I'm like, hey, look, bye. You're welcome. I just gave you money.
Yeah.
So it's a shame, but I mean, obviously we have to be safe. It's probably the worst idea in the world to go to a place where everyone touches the same things over and over and over.
Yeah. Right.
But it's so crucial to the hobby, and the amount of people that I've heard that are like, oh, I joined in April of last year. And I'm like, oh, so you've never been, or, oh, I joined in December or I started buying stuff in late fall. And by the time meetups were going to start happening, they were shut down. And it stinks to know that there are people that have been in this hobby for almost a year or over a year now that have never gotten to experience a meetup, because Cyrus and I have been to a handful now. You really get to kind of define what you like. You get, I think another huge thing is like stabs. Like, stabs are a weird thing because there's, make them for what you like, but do you even like what stabs you're doing? Like, go type on a few, because you'll find people who are very good at making stabs, and you'll find that you really want to try a Koyu, but every Koyu you've tried doesn't have good stabilizers.
Yeah, and like you realize what's like make or break for you, right?
Yeah.
Because some people are more sensitive than others. I mean, I think there's a big psychological aspect to that, right? Like, I mean, speaking of the aftermarket, especially, for example, if you're a new person, obviously you've encountered Mech Market. Obviously, you know what the general trend of prices is. But if you want to try that one thing, the only options you have are there. Or Mech Market, Discord, whatever it is, right? But the overall trend is the same. So at least when you go to a meetup, that perceived value can drop significantly, because it's like you see it in person, you don't like it, you're like, oh, okay, I don't think this is like a $250 key set anymore. I think it's just like a retail 120 or 130, whatever, right? But now we have so many new people who have basically been sitting at their desks being like, do I get this? Do I not get this? Do I get this? I could save for this. And then, eventually they might give in. And then, if you have enough people do that collective choice of, I'll buy it anyway, even if it's pricey, then the market price is going to establish itself, right? Because that's the only option you have. But, and that I think that's why it's so important to go to meetups to check out things, is because you actually need to kind of psychologically, like, inform yourself of what the value of things are,
Right.
in person, and applies to keyboards too, like, very hyped keyboards or whatever. I mean, for example, like that vintage was a big thing for me, like, because I actually had huge interest in vintage at the beginning, but I went to meetups, I tried, there's some big distorted guys who would come and bring like dozens, right?
Yeah.
Because they tend to collect quite heavily. They tend to do like the whole e-dump electronic stuff, and I would try them and I'll be like, this is all I need to do. All I need to do is just go to the meetup, try it out. It's sick. It's great. It sounds awesome, but I don't need to have it. It's heavy. It's impractical. I'm probably only going to use it once every I don't even know.
Yeah.
Maybe never.
I don't need
So
this many
yeah.
showpieces.
yeah. It's like, and then I think about like that occupies this much of a table. I don't have that shelf space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I need a
Like, I
board with an
just
11U
don't.
spacebar? Probably not.
That fucking
Yeah.
what's that board Huey has, or it's the whale or
The
whatever.
beam spring.
The beam spring
Yeah.
one, where it literally
Yeah,
is
yeah,
like the size of 2
Yeah.
CPU towers.
And you need like this wrist rest that goes like this all the way up.
You're
But
like,
yeah,
I'm
it's
having a
crazy.
great time.
But no, I
But
wonder
when you see it in
how-
person, it's awesome.
I'm sure it's great in person for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
but
I wonder.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people have gotten in the hobby in the past like year and a half that haven't had a chance to go to meetups, or like they've bought boards, they've gotten key sets, but they really have no idea what they actually like because they haven't had a chance to
Yeah.
go try out a bunch of stuff. Because I feel like we've said, you really can hone in on what you like and don't like when you have the chance to try out 150 boards. You know, even though it is only for a couple minutes, but it completely changes your outlook on certain things.
Yeah. You tend to see the best at the meetups too, because people want to show off.
Mhm.
You can't do that online. Actually, it doesn't happen as much because for you to show off, you need to set it up and take a picture of it. Most people are lazy. They won't do it. So they'll do whatever setup they currently have. They'll just like snap a pic and put it up, right? If they have to. And so I do think that the best stuff comes out at meetups, and you get to see these color combos, right? And that's what you're like, oh, I thought Solarized Dark was a really greenish set, but actually looks pretty blue here in person or whatever. And it looks great on this like particular case color. But look at it in a render, look at it in a picture, it's gonna fool you most likely because it's one of those difficult sets to like capture, for example.
yeah, it's. I think I'm trying to think. GMK Lime, I think, was one that I don't have it anymore just because I wound up Cerakoting my Baka, and Lime was on my Baka, and I just didn't really have a use for it, and wound up selling Lime to help pay for the Key Cult. But that was one of those sets where I was like, "Fuck, I can finally see it in person. Like, is it worth going and picking up?" I was fortunate that Novel Keys just had it for extras price, so I didn't have to go shell out $400 for it. But and it's also cool to see boards that like I'm never gonna own this, but at least I get a chance to play with it. It's kind of like test driving a car that you're never gonna go buy. Like I with like kind of like the Satisfaction 75, right? Like I would love to, we were fortunate enough to test one, but that would be one that I'd be like absolutely wanting to go type on because you just don't know, you have no idea, but sometimes you just want to test things. Sometimes you just want something to kind of type on for a minute and go, okay, this is how it feels. This is how it feels. And
Yeah.
not Jax, but Jeff Leopard brought up a good point where typed on TGR boards and lost all glamour. Yeah, some boards you might type on fucking key colts, and someone be like, you might be like, I don't get it.
It's just a keyboard. It's just a keyboard.
At the end of the day, it's
like,
a keyboard. It's got very specific parts about it. But if you don't like those specific parts, that doesn't make Key Cult bad boards. But that makes your preference different from what that keyboard is. You could be totally fine with a tofu. Like who?
Yeah. Hey, Alex, hello.
What up?
And but that's what I tell people. It's like there's a reason why I try to tell people, like, I try to not buy anything above retail, like especially keyboards, because those scale up pretty heavily.
Yeah.
Because once I get it, I'm most likely gonna put it next to my other keyboard or keyboards and be like, oh, it's just this chunk of aluminum, has little nice engravings on this one, but okay.
Things are always
but
getting
I spent
better.
about double. It's like, no, I don't think so. I don't think I'll do it again. I've done it. And so I'm just like, some stuff you want certain those, sure, make that choice yourself. Like you're on the fence, just decide there. But like stuff that you're unsure about, it's best not to jump on those. Like not pull the trigger on the stuff you're slightly doubtful, because most likely they're not gonna compare well to the other stuff like you might have seen or have had before. Yeah.
That's why it's always interesting to me that like certain boards And I feel like it's been less so lately. But older boards carry like certain mystiques, like like
Oh
with
yeah.
TGRs, like like the 910. Like I built a 910. I'm like, yeah, there's nothing special. Like this is
I mean,
good, but
yeah.
it's not to the level of what we're doing now, right? There's been so much
It's
progression.
people don't understand. I mean, this is my perception of look. I think my perception of TGR varies from
Mhm.
the majority of people. The reason I admire TGR as far as like I really like the board is because the person behind it is very good. Like it's actually the reason TGR caught up popularity was because Yutzi, right, the runner, always fulfilled. Like it's like might take a long time, but he's still hard. Like he's hard working, and he's always going to be like, don't worry, guys. I'm gonna put up. You are going to get that keyboard that you got, like ordered, and like it's like the work ethic. Like people basically had a good impression of him, right? And overall, it kind of like translated subjectively into the quality of the boards. But if you do look at a lot of older, like let's say TGR boards, or even older, Korean boards, like for example, you'll see that relatively the anodizing quality, the overall machining, like there's a lot of like shortcuts that have been taken, and the overall quality suffered a lot. Like back in the day, because they just didn't have that quality standard back
Mhm.
then. Back then, it was like, oh, it's heavy, it's relatively smooth, the color is there, everything mounts, no, the screw holes, like everything goes into the screw, like the screws are working. Great, it's a keyboard, it works, it's just functional, and that's it, right? But now it's like, oh, the anodizing has to be this fine, and if it has a splotch, that's a B stock, whatever. Now we argue a lot about these things, and like my perspective of like all these like more popular brands varies based on, like, I do really empathize uh with vendors on a more like emotional level, in the sense that I just like, if I don't like the vendor, I most likely won't like their product. Like just that's just how that's just how I relate to people,
Mhm.
or and to these items, right? But for some people, it's like want that perfect machining or the perfect anodizing, but it might not be in that legendary board that you heard about.
Mhm.
That's definitely gonna be blown up by the people who have that subjective bias about it. Yeah, to them it looks perfect. It's beautiful. I mean, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder,
It's
right?
maybe this
So
is a harsh analogy, but I feel like the Cyrus and I are like the 910 was always like a donkey dressed as a Mustang. Like you're kind of like
mm,
it's a harsh analogy, but you're like, this is nothing. Like it's
I think
the ano's solid, but there's nothing that special about this board.
it was more that because when I was really getting into the hobby was when that board first really popped off. And it was
Mm.
one of those boards that was at least to me, it really brought on the polycarb,
oh yeah.
65%. Like it did that, and then
Hmm.
it was
It
regarded as
was, yeah.
the best 65% for the longest time. And I held it in that place, and it was
Hmm.
like almost an unachievable greatness of board. And then I
Mhm.
built it, and I was just like, well, I have a Bauer, and that's just as good, if not better, And now my like
Yeah,
165, I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
that's better.
yeah,
Like what?
exactly.
Like what? It's like why would people spend $2,000 for this? It just doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We have a
Okay, yeah.
question. Or sorry, you
Go
go,
ahead.
and then we'll get to
I was
references.
going to actually address the question in chat. I
Yeah,
think it
wrote
says
from
Roka60 is
yeah.
saying, "Do you believe in endgame boards, or just boards that you enjoy at the current time?" This perfectly connects to this. Like
Yeah.
it's I okay. If I gave you a list of boards that I own, a lot of people are going to be like, "You have so many endgame boards, right?" But if I quantify the amount of time I spend typing on each of them or whatnot, I actually swap around like with them a lot. So in other words, there is no one board that I'm always using. Like people ask like, what's your daily driver or what's your favorite board? That question can be difficult for me to answer, because
Yeah.
I actually just type on all these boards that I have. You know what I do? I have a spreadsheet, right?
Mhm.
The list of boards is there with all the specs. It's like what plate, what color, whatever, whatever. And then at the end, there is a list of numbers. I just put random.org 1 through whatever, and I just roll the dice, and that board, the one that gets picked is the board I type on for the day. And then whenever I just feel like changing it up, do it
Yeah.
again. Yeah. And
It's
the reality
it's a
is,
fun weekly thing to do for at least for me.
yeah, it's
I do a
nice to
weekly where I'm
change
like,
it up.
change it up.
Yeah. And sometimes, yeah, some boards are a bit better than others, but it doesn't necessarily mean I have to spend all my time and energy kind of like putting them on the spotlight
Mhm.
and and like it doesn't have to be like on a pedestal all the time. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, like if I just consider it individually in my collection or something like that, then sure, I will say like, yeah, this board is fantastic. I'm very proud of it. I love this particular brand or like model or like design, and this is probably one of my favorites. But as far as usage time goes, they all are very comparable. So
Mhm.
Yeah,
yeah,
I
there's no end
think
game. There's no end game. No such thing.
I think it's one of those things you come in thinking there's an end game, but then as you acquire more boards and you try more things, you begin to appreciate the small things that are the differences between boards that make you wake up and say, "I want to use this board today," or "I want to use this," or like you're looking for a certain sound or a certain type feel. You're like, "Oh, I'm gonna use," like for me, if I want something that's to be a little bit more flexible, I'll use my Sirius. If I want something
Yeah.
that's going to be a little bit louder, a little bit more of a pleasing, like deep sound, I'll use my Iron because it's got Zycos in it, And if I want something just kind of in between, it's
Yeah.
my Baka. I've got boards for all these different
Yeah.
types, things that
Yeah.
I appreciate about keyboards that are all over the spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's unfortunate to say that my end game is the variety. And so that means I'll always be spending money to continue having that variety, meaning that I will always be in the hobby, which is kind of like sad because it's like normally I came in thinking I'm just gonna get one for the office,
Yeah.
one for home, and call it a day. No. No, I want all these
Varieties.
colors.
Listen, variety is the spice of life.
Oh yeah.
I don't
yeah.
I don't think Endgame. I've talked about this a lot. I think Grails is where we should do. We're going to take one from the sneakerhead community. I think there are Grails. Like I love my key cult. Is it my favorite? No, it's not. I don't.
Yeah.
There are things about the key cult that I don't like that I prefer on other boards. If you held a gun to my head and said you have to pick one board, it would be the Baka 60. I mean, but that's kind of cheating, I guess, because I designed it. Like, if
change
I
it
had to
up.
leave those out, I'd probably pick the Crown because I really like the Crown, and it's a
Yeah.
TKL. And then you put with all the different switches, with adding, I think Grails are an interesting thing. I think my big one is this. This is the Grail keyboard for
Singa.
me. It's just polycarbonate Singa. It's a fantastic board.
So
I always
good.
talk about selling it, and then I type on it for a day, and I'm like, nope.
I have a Singa in navy as well,
Mhm.
and it's a beautiful navy with the stainless steel polish weight or whatever. And I'm like, I don't use this layout much. I should just sell it. But then I type and I'm like, but I
It's like,
like it.
I
This
will
navy's so nice. It looks
remember
so good. The
you.
weight is beautiful. And then
It-
I cower.
it's so good. I mean, for those who don't know, I actually used to be nicknamed Aslan because
Oh yeah.
the main look.
Yeah.
My hair used to be shorter and it just stuck out, so it definitely had that complete look to it. But so I'm like kind of that, and then like this specific board was Jay from Top Clacks, and then it was Langlandia's, and now it's mine. So I'm like, I don't like it's. I have a piece of my friend's keyboard history in my hands,
Yeah.
and so like
Yeah.
I probably use this the least. Surprising. I love the layout. I mean, my biggest gripe is that bullshit. Right? Come on, right there.
Oh.
Yeah, USB Mini.
Ugh. But it sounds great. It looks great. It's just a great board. Just because I don't use it as much, doesn't make it less of a great board. And I enjoy
Yeah.
switching to it often.
Totally.
I try and explain this to my wife when she looks at me and goes, "How many boards do you have?" I'm like, let's not talk about that. Let's not put numbers on it.
Listen, I got open space.
Yeah.
You can always store them over here, bud.
No, she tries to deny that she's in the hobby, but I'm like, you have 4 keyboards to your name. I'm like, you're in the hobby. You have preferences on switches. You're in the hobby.
Yeah. Oh man, that's actually hilarious. One like I guess my ex partner like she also was the same. It was like, oh, I'm not involved in the one. You gave me one and that was great. Oh, but then you tell me you want that one and then you want this key set because it's very cute and it's like, well, but you're making these purchases. I'm not even doing anything. It's like, well, you're in the hobby. Yeah,
But to be fair,
it
she
applies
only
to everybody.
we only like she only got one, right? It was like her rainbow stacked acrylic was the one where let's get this one.
Yeah.
So it's that was the one that she kind of picked and handpicked, and it was fun. But no, I think if I can tell anybody this, it's
I was gonna say Chewy just masks his keyboard collection by just giving
when I tell
wife.
her my number, I exclude the fact that technically I part own. But also we're married with no prenup, so she also has over a dozen keyboards. So it's a hobby. But no, I strongly suggest people stop using the term end game because they're just. I mean, if you like two different switches, then great. Congratulations, you now have two different end games. It could be the same board but with two different switches.
Yeah.
Just use Grails. It's a Grail board. I think when I built my key colt, I was like, I love the way that my wife's Bauer sounds. I love the way that Eric's Iron 165 sounds. I was like, I want to get a gasket mounted board. I want to put Zycos in it, and that's going to be like that Zyco Grail of, okay, this is going to sound really, really good. But Grails, make it a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
if you have the self-control to quit, like as in get the Grail and then move away, do it if you can.
Yeah, do it if you can. Yeah, absolutely.
Do it if you can.
If you buy it,
know yourself though. I know I'm not capable right now.
Yeah.
Oh man.
If you guys have any more questions for Lightning Keyboards or the boys at Mechs on Deck, please hit at Mechs on Deck because it's hard to read. It's just easier for us to find.
It's Wednesday.
Wednesday streams are either like super high energy or I'm like, Jesus, just get me to the finish line. Just get me to Friday.
Yeah.
So. I mean, Minty Boy says exactly why I don't want to try Topre. It's a perfect keyb. That's kind of me too. I'm afraid that I'm gonna get like an HHKB and then I'm gonna fall in love with Topra as a switch, and then I'm gonna like just go down the road of getting like a Norba Touch, Norba Force, like all of them, and just all of, because I feel like even though the entry into Topra is easy, right? Like the board's not that expensive, right? You can go buy. I could go buy an R3 HHKB on Amazon right now. I could go do it.
Yep.
And I can get it in 2 days. But then when you start getting into the aftermarket stuff, it starts getting crazy. But man, they're beautiful.
Would love to hear tips on keyboard photography top 3.
Ooh.
Top 3? Okay. I have a few tips for that. First of all is just understand like the key, like 3-4 settings, right? So you want to understand ISO, you want to understand aperture, right? Like your f-stops, right? You want to understand shutter speed, right? I think understanding those 3 things is vital because I guess it's connected to a second tip. It's like, just have a tripod. Please just get a tripod. It'll change your life, like for pictures. Like if you can just have it stationary and turn the shutter speed so that you can keep it open for a long time and get all the light that you want. Even if you don't have good lighting, it will make or break a photo. In my opinion, is take the best photo that you don't have to edit. Right? Like doing post sucks. I hate doing post. I don't like it. I actually have some presets. I pretty much apply preset, adjust the slider slightly, done, export. That's a goal I want when I'm like taking pictures, right? So
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm interested because it seems like there are multiple different styles of keyboard photos online, right? yours is a very natural look. Yours is always like, I look at the photos that you take, the photos you post, and I'm like, well, I feel like I'm just looking at what my desk would look like if I was looking at it in person.
Yeah.
And then there's
Yeah.
other ones where I'm like, this is super overly saturated, super like crazy, like way too much. And then there's some that are kind of in between. What are your thoughts on that? On those like crazy.
Well, I mean, I have to say there's people who do like excellent photography. Like, I mean, I really like Alex's photography. Okay, like you know, he has such a good eye for like product placement. He like puts in some switches, puts it the right places so that the keyboard doesn't like fully dominate. Like, he has really good composition.
He's really
And
good at creating
really
a
knows,
scene. Yeah.
the scene and the like making the colors like pop. And like, he's really good at that stuff. Or like, what's his name? From Europe. Is it Keyworker? Is that right? He also makes cables, I think. I forget his name.
So.
I don't
But
remember.
yeah, he also does spectacular shots, and he also like shares kind of his process. And when I see that, I'm like, he's a pro. Like, because he will use because key work. He'll use like materials you can find at home, but in such ingenious ways. But he actually knows the subtleties of like lighting and that kind of stuff that I know too, but I don't do it because I'm lazy.
Lighting
Right?
sucks.
I know that.
photography, for those who don't know, photography is like 98% photography or
lighting.
Lighting. It's just I don't take amazing pictures or anything, but I try and take pictures with natural light. I think that's if there's a tip that I can give, is if you have the opportunity to take a picture sometime between like 10 and 1 in the middle of the day, just right in the middle where it's you're not getting any coolness or warmness from the sun, and you can take a picture and get it. Do that. If you're having a hard time with there are some sets that are just difficult, like fuck me. Like, I love Mizu. Fuck Mizu. Mizu's so goddamn hard to edit. Because if you it has to be super bright, but if it's too bright, then it starts washing out the colors, and it's ridiculous. Like, I hate editing Mizu. And it's just one of those things. But yeah, I would just, my only tip is try and use as much natural light as possible.
Yeah. So I actually don't have natural light at all, which is actually what, touching on Osiris's point, the reason I take photos like of just my desk as it looks is because I don't have a lot of like natural settings to play with. I actually don't like, I live with 2 other people, but obviously like it's a common area and whatnot. I don't want to be the guy always in the common area trying to fiddle around with natural light over there and like, hang out and be like, sorry about that, but I'm about to do this thing, and like getting in the way of people and whatnot. So I just do it in my room where I can do it freely and there's no restrictions, right? But I just do it with like this big studio light that I have and like a few other little props or whatever. But it's because I just don't have access to good natural lighting. And so I just work with what I have. And someone said Flash is super useful if you know how to use it. It's actually very much underrated. As long as you know that you can bounce off the flash off of different walls or like places, you're set. You actually will figure it out yourself. But yeah, that's pretty much what I like always suggest. It's like, just have a lot of light first, and then you can start tweaking, like whether you want less, whether you want more, whether you want to put a little like prop over here to get some background in and whatnot. But yeah, I think like photography for me, it's mostly about I do really value like, at least in keyboards, my goal for keyboard photography is like color accuracy. It is like putting a photo that's representative of what I'm seeing, because I want people to look at the photo and say, I could actually set something like that up.
Yeah.
And now I actually know what it looks like, instead of having to look at a more saturated photo where like, it's set up, but that's why you can't trust it, because you actually you aren't sure how it actually compares to like real life objects, right? So yeah, that's the goal for me. I mean, that's just like a personal thing. But I used to do like, other photography where I could like put props, all that kind of stuff. But I honestly, like, I'm a lot more systematic. I think Jedi Junior just mentioned earlier, having the consistency of your like method gives you a lot of room to play with later on if you want to. And so occasionally I'll like change it up. Like, I'll change the angles, I'll change like maybe I like put a certain like colored light in the background, like I have like an RGB strip, for example, that kind of stuff. But once you know your process like all the way through, it's so easy to just put in little things.
Yeah.
And
Developing
take
a
some out.
style and then slowly
Yeah.
modifying that style makes it, and like you're able to have a consistency that people enjoy, they like, but then you're able to change it up a little bit, but not go so far away from what you're normally doing to where it makes sense, and then it can basically you're building almost a brand with just your pictures.
Yeah.
For the gear nerds, what kind of camera setup do you use? Like, what lens do you typically lean towards?
So I actually have it right here. So, well, I mean, it's not obviously on the camera, but I use a Sigma 30 millimeter. For it's a crop lens pretty much. Yeah, Sigma 30.
Sigma
And I
30.
have a Sony A6400. I actually used to be a Nikon boy for over 10 years. I was like, I used to do like photography as like a part-time kind of gig. And I was Nikon all the way through. I like had a D750 and like occasionally use my friends like Canon stuff. But I love Nikon's like image fidelity and like color accuracy and all that good stuff. Jumping to Sony was interesting. I learned about calibrating my monitors even better than before because Sony colors are bad.
Yeah,
Stock.
purples just
So
like
you have
don't
to,
exist.
yeah, you have to like modify your picture profiles and like white balance, all that good stuff. I purchased a ton of stuff, but I actually have zero intent to go back to full frame. The glass is too expensive. I cannot afford it. I cannot afford another expensive hobby, first of all. And I just cannot justify it enough because before I used to I could actually make money out of the photography, right? But now it's like I actually just don't have the time to be out there doing a lot of different photography and kind of like really using that full potential of the camera. So I actually will stick with crop lens, crop sensor, and just like simple prime lenses like these, and just play around with what I have and see what I can achieve with that. I think that's kind of like my challenge for myself. It's like see what you can do with the little you have.
We're all
For
Sony
those
boys.
for those who have the Sony camera crew, the 30 mil from Sigma is amazing. Like it's easily my favorite lens of the. Guess what I have?
Yeah, I have the 16 one as well.
Yeah, that's what is on this. For streaming, I think half the damn hobby of streamers use the 16 mil.
Right
I mean, I still use this is still a webcam, but
I mean,
I also don't want to buy a second one yet because I know that I sit there for now. But once I start justifying that, actually, maybe once things are better and I can actually go on photo walks, like go outside and use my main camera for stuff, I'll be able to justify a dedicated camera for streaming, let's say for my face.
We got really lucky and found some A6000s on like dirt cheap sale.
They were
from,
$250.
like the Amazon. It was $250 a piece.
Oh wow, very good.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. We're like it was like the Amazon warehouse sale, and they're just getting rid of stuff as best they can.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah,
we're like, do we want to do this? I'm like, yup. Let's lock that down. Right now.
Yeah.
But we had another question earlier. With how the hobby has changed over the time you've been in the hobby, where do you think the hobby is going? Super open-ended. Feel free to take it wherever you will. More in-stock, board design, etc. This is from Mason Gray.
Yeah, in stock is gonna be more of a thing. I mean, first of all, we are slowly expanding the injection molded keyboard arena. So we're gonna slowly basically replace all the popular pre-builds we used to have, like people recommending like Cooler Master, Leopold, all that good stuff. I mean, those are still going to be there because those are mass produced. But we're gonna have like enthusiast grade or enthusiast level, like basically pre-builts, such as the NK65 and so on, be a regular stock. I think that's the trajectory we're headed towards, like the Kara, that kind of stuff. And then there's gonna be a big separation in that market where like the entry point is to the customizable, like fully customizable scene, or like the where it's more design focused. And I think it's still gonna remain a little bit grassroots, where there's gonna be individual designers rather than like teams or like companies. I think I think that's gonna stay because people want, like, I think as a designer, most people want to have that individual way of expressing themselves. So I
Mhm.
think that's gonna stay the same way. The only thing that might change is because now we have vendors to manage everything, is that quantities might increase, and you'll start to see a little bit of depersonalization from the designer. So like you'll actually see much less involvement from the designer on logistics. So people will actually stop associating that with the designers and associating more with the vendors. It's like the same way people are calling like the thermals like a Rama board, but it's not at all,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's a Wilba
It's
board, right?
association.
Yeah, but by association, the vendors are going to take a lot of that attention.
Mhm.
And of course, there's going to be like competition there in that arena where like I mean, like vendors are going to compete for like what the perception is of the market of them. Like, are they classified as like accessible or premium, luxury? I think that's where we're headed.
Mhm.
We're kind of like on the fast track there right now.
Yeah. I've said
Yeah.
I've always said that I feel like what's gonna happen is you're gonna see things start to spread apart and kind of split almost. You're gonna have
Yeah.
the low end, and it feels bad saying low end, but the entry point is a better term, like
Entry.
you
Yeah.
said,
Mhm.
is gonna get
Mhm.
lower price while still maintaining a good quality, and then the highest end is going to get more and more expensive,
Yeah.
um, and is still going to maintain that somewhat of exclusivity just because of production time, quality, wanting to maintain that level of production. Can't do
Hmm.
mass production and maintain the same quality. You have to, cut corners. And then everything else in
Or just have a
between.
2-year long group buy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
everything in between is going to be where people can play and people can do fun new things. Um, I'm excited about the future of like private group buys. I think that's going to be the way where new designers can basically try out things with a private group
Hmm.
buy with their friends from their favorite Discord, and they
Yeah.
can
I mean,
sell
mhm.
something, and then all of a sudden it gets picked up, and maybe their round two is on Canon Keys or on OmniType.
It's already a thing, by the way.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, like, there's a lot of people who privately run. So we know this, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of bars you see the name of them like for the first time, and you're like, "What was this?"
The
And
hell
they're
was
like,
that?
"Oh, it was a privately run board."
How did I miss
Um,
that? Yeah.
yeah. That will happen all the time. Just I
I've
warn people
one of my
not to
boards
feel so
is
much FOMO because people always love being. They want to be in on everything, and I understand that that's gonna be an impulse. And also, well, I personally always will probably condemn, if anything, if a designer says I'm going to limit it because I want it to be limited, like it's in like
hmm
collector value. I'm like completely against that idea. Like I'm not I don't sign up to that philosophy, that school of thought at all. Because personally, I'm like, even at the high end, I believe in accessibility,
yeah.
even for people who have a higher price bracket to reach. That's okay, but like it should be still something that someone, even like let's say from like a lower like bracket, right, like maybe it's not in their budget, but if they wanted to, they can reach it. They
Mhm.
really wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so ultimately I'm like against like the idea of like people who might want to run things in a limited fashion, not because they're unable to handle logistics, but just because they wanted to add that like limited edition sort of
Mhm.
flair. I'm
Or
not.
if you're gonna make
I'm
limited
really
edition,
not for that.
make limited edition, but make the same damn board.
Correct.
Maybe
Yeah,
limit the colors, right? There's a
like
way to do
exclusives
it.
boards.
Yeah,
yeah.
limit the colors. If you want something done where it's like, oh, I want to serve both. It's like, okay, cool. Then do like do white, right? Make a
Yeah,
whiteboard, make that exclusive, and
yeah,
do a PVD weight or something, and then everything else is the standard edition. It's the same board. It just doesn't have some of the bells and whistles.
I
So,
agree. Yeah. Mhm.
got a couple questions to go through. Pentium math. What about the newcomer market? Like the fields like vegetation. What the hell's vegetation? Education, where we're all forced into virtual learning.
I th- I don't know if that's
Or is that, it kind of seemed like a question, but
yeah. I don't think
maybe you can come. We'll go to your next question. Will correctly lubed pre-made boards ever become a thing? Not for cheap.
I don't think
Not
so.
for cheap. No,
I don't
Not
no.
for
think you
cheap.
I
can
mean,
realistically have that.
if you define correctly as like proper application of the lube, like evenly everywhere and all that kind of stuff, I don't think so.
The problem
It's
too
not
is when
viable.
you're talking about shipping, like freighting and like the board like flying, like lube changes. Like
Yep.
even
Yeah.
when we went to NorCal and we put the boards in the plane, when I got back, the stabs were all a little bit weird. Everything gets a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah.
wonky.
Took a minute to readjust.
Especially back in the day when I used a lot of like super lube and dielectric grease, they tend to like dislodge from
Dielectric
it in other
grease was
places. Yeah.
man,
Tends to
dielectric grease
run.
was the days. That was a well, time to find
Mhm.
something new.
Yep.
And on top of that, even just going from like, oh, I'm your vendor up north and you shipping down south, like that from freezing temperatures to 80 degrees, it's gonna be different. It's a liquid, right?
Oh yeah.
So your best bet, learn how to lube. Like and honest
Yeah. Or
lubing's
you can always
it's
ask someone to do it.
ask someone
There's
to do it, but or learn how to lube. Learn
yeah.
how to lube is easy. It's something you can do over and over and over to get right. Right? You can you can practice doing it. It's not like a PCB is going to give out because you built a board 1,500 times.
Upas, thank you. 14
Upas,
months,
thank
2
you
days in a row.
for the 14 months. I feel like Upas is like Papa Upas is watching his his streamers. Jedi Junior asks a great question. Any thoughts on the oversaturation in the keycap design space? I'd love to make a set, but I'm so intimidated with how many sets seem to be running at all the time.
Let me see. So I think it's a lot of people. The thing is, sets. Even though there's so many sets running, the reality is a lot of them, or most of them, are actually hitting MOQ, meaning that there is a subspace of that scene that is interested in what you're doing. Most likely, presentations, of course, super important. But I personally think that if you have an idea and you think it's a good one that other people might be interested in doing, you should still express it. Like you should put it out there, because you might be surprised by how many people are actually interested. And then if so, you'll be motivated to like reach out to vendors or whatever, and they might want to pick it up, and sometimes they might actually push you up the line or something, because sometimes like projects change timelines a lot of the time, because like collaborations might change, things like that. So you actually don't know, even if the line seems like there's like a whole year ahead of key sets, say that a vendor already has booked. Things have changed. Like that happened to me with like Greek Beige, I believe. So I personally think if you have an idea you think is good, for yourself and for a subset of other people, just do it. Just go for it.
Knock it out.
Yeah.
Don't be dead set. I think my biggest thing is there was a time where everyone was like dead set of, I want to run it this month. Just go into it, just put it out there, see what happens. Like be open. If someone's like, hey, I want to run this next month. If someone's like, hey, I want to run this next year. Like be open to it.
Yeah.
The
be open to
important part
changes
is
too.
the important part is that they said, I will run this.
Right.
Yeah.
Not when.
It's like eventually, but I want to run it. And I think that's super important. Yeah. I mean, hey, Hander by technically failure at first, and then it happened. It took
happened.
like
It
2 years,
exists.
but it happened. It exists now. And like now people are like, R2, when? I'm like, back then it was like, oh, so ugly, Fisher Price, toy looking key set.
Krellbit's shirt. How did this
Yeah.
say it? MOQ?
I mean, how the turntables,
Yeah,
But yeah, I think just do it. I mean, hey, GMK Hamon was a meme. GMK EPVT Cool Kids was a meme, basically.
Dots,
right?
Dots was a meme.
Dots is a meme. Like
Dots
all
got
starts
around too.
and has a variant and is super popular. I mean,
has a keyboard.
Yeah, it's
put it out there. Yeah.
Oh man.
So
Greg, yeah.
Jeff Leopard asks, Diego, can I have your click clacks?
I'll try to share.
So Kimchi Jody Boy with posting a paragraph. How do y'all feel about the idea of a centralized source of information for newer people coming into the hobby? Much of the information that exists is spread across Discord, Reddit, Geekhack, Keep Talk, etc. And even more of accepted information is learned from experience or speaking with others Would you guys like to see something like a massive dedicated wiki or keyboard information? If so, would you all go into maintaining such a massive source of information? You nailed it right at the end, right? Maintaining is the hard part.
Yeah.
We've seen a
The
lot
thing
of
is,
these sites pop up and then fail.
people have wanted to. Yeah, people have wanted to. This has been a topic, like, it's all the time around, and yeah, people have tried and failed, and I don't think anyone really wants to do all that work for free either. So there, I mean, even if it were crowdsourced, it's pretty hard, honestly, because like there are some people who are super particular about like formatting and that kind of stuff, and they might get into fights about it. But more importantly, I think the conclusion to that would probably be that, yeah, all this information will be spread. The most important thing is for people who have some amount of like influence in terms of spreading that information, like teachers, like basically like people who tend to teach, like for example us content creators and stuff. It's important for us to compile those like documents and links for people to see, and like have it available to people who ask. It's just like, if you wanted to know, let's say about the newest, I don't know, like a tech review, right? There's so many websites that do blogs and like reviews, right? But and you don't go to just one; you actually go to several of them to see what they think. I think it's best to have people freely express themselves and what they think about whatever product, and or like whatever information, like maybe like ways of lubing switches, right? And then like you could, like, someone can just make a directory, like a quick directory, or like short comment note saying like, oh, let's say like Nathan doesn't like using lube on the inside housing of the stabs, which is true. Actually, he actually doesn't like using, he doesn't apply any lube on the inside part of the stab housing. He actually just uses the wire. Or for like, I think like Anthony 001 also does that, and like, and people do it differently. But the important part is compiling that information. You don't have to do it very like, you don't have to make it a project. Just make it visible.
Yeah.
Don't make it a project. Just make it visible. Yeah.
It's one of those things that every time something like that comes up, like Keyboard University was mentioned, it starts off great.
Yeah.
There's always it starts off where it's a solid project, and then whether it's a lack of time or honestly lack of money, I feel like more often than not, it just doesn't get updated. It just
Mm.
gets to a certain place, gets to a certain point, and then it sits there. Like that's the biggest thing. If there was money involved, a significant amount of money involved, to where the people who are involved in it could really devote serious time into it, then I think it could be successful. But without that,
Yeah.
I don't think it will truly last. Could be proven wrong, but I feel like that's kind of what it's hinging on.
Yep. I mean, he has a follow up here. It says information will be spread, yes, but there will also be an inherent spread of misinformation. For example, relubing switches. There seems to be not only differing opinions, but often incorrect info like switch X must be relubed after a certain amount of time. The question is, or I guess the answer to that is, there's always going to be, I guess, like conflicts of interest, rather. And actually, when money starts getting involved, those conflicts of interest are actually going to get inflated. Some people are going to want to spread certain information because maybe it promotes the sale of a certain product or something like that. Again, hypothetical. And there's going to be people who are fact checking, just like in everything else that we see, like in the outside of this hobby. But the reality is, if you are someone who is knowledgeable and want to guide someone who is new, just, I think it's a bigger investment to have patience and be able to just give that information to them and be like, oh, just by the way, this is not true. Just so you just take it with a grain of salt. Like
Keyboard University.
Give them like a PSA. Yeah, give them like a PSA, and FYI, just watch out for this.
That's the problem, right? Keyboard University exists, and we'll kind of shat on it before. We'll shit on it again. Keyboard University exists. It's just a giant fucking ad.
Yeah.
It's just a giant ad. Like it's
there
hard to do it. The best thing you can do is the best thing you can do, and it sucks because it's not the best way. The best way would be to have a wiki. Talk to people in Discord. people, the best part about this hobby is people fucking love talking about this hobby. People love talking about this hobby and talking about the things they know in this hobby.
Oh yeah.
I'm willing to bet if you go in and go, can someone PM me? I want to learn more about keyboards. Can someone PM me? Like, you get 8 people. People go like, how much information do you want to know? Like people just fucking, they get off on fucking being able to talk about this hobby. And we've all three of us have been here. All three of us have been there like, okay, how much do you want to know? And they're like, okay, time out. You've just given too much information. Like, you've given me too much to know. And so it's tough for people who might be introverted. I totally get that. If you're not a people person, I completely understand that you would much rather learn from like an image that gives you all the information. But unfortunately, there's so much to get into. There's so much to start off with. And it's tough. Like we tried to do, we did like a kind of beginner course over our first like 15 episodes, but that's like 10 hours of listening to videos. And then you're probably just still left with questions.
Yeah. I mean, I actually get a lot of newcomer requests for builds, so I actually deal with that quite a lot. But overall, I try to just break it down to the simplest way possible. Like it's like they ask me like, oh hey, I'm new to this and I wanted a TKL. What do I do? But that's it. Like that's all they say. I'm like, okay, let me just walk you through it. A keyboard kit is what you need. Like the 3 main components you'll need, and to send to me in this case, right, is keyboard kit, which includes the case, plate, and PCB. Then stabs, switches. And then I don't tell them about like lube and all that stuff because I know they dig into this, right? And then they're like, okay, I have those. Like I picked those, and then you can go into the next topic. I think you need to break it down that way. If you just give them this big lump of info on a wiki that it's structured in there, but they still have to go and control F things and read massive, piece of text, and even if they're like infographics, people don't want to spend that much time doing that. You just have to chunk it up. Like you just have to chunk it out and give it to them, like give it to people in smaller pieces. Like that's that's the best way in my opinion. Just let them digest it little by little, but
Shout
just
out to
be there for them.
Shout out to 001 Anthony, because I just hit that guy so many questions, and he just sat there. And Huey were excellent at me getting started into the hobby, because Eric kind of got me into the hobby, but Eric had built one or maybe 3 boards at that time, and I'm like, I need to know quite a bit. And Anthony was like publicly in Discord at any time, he was like, let me tell you, let me ask. And I would hop in Top Clack when it was Huey and Brian ask questions, and they would answer them. And it's like, people
many questions I've
questions.
asked Brian.
Like
especially lubing switches.
Just ask people. Just ask people, and don't be afraid to test and make mistakes.
I mean, some people might like for the newcomers, right? Like some people might flip you off for sure. Like they might be like, sorry, I'm too busy, I can't tell you, like or they just don't even respond. But
that's why I would say publicly.
Ten Teacher says it too. Like people say like, oh, it's all preference, do whatever you want, which is partially true, but they're like, for a newcomer that doesn't feel any welcome. So at least give them some recommendations, and then say like, well, but take it with a grain of salt because this is what I like.
Some general guidance.
But at least that's a start. It's something.
Just don't ask. This is the only question I don't like answering. Please don't come to me and say, I have $30. What kind of custom keyboard can I make? I will tell you, save more money. It's a douchey response. Like, you're not going to get anything that you're going to like. It's going to be a 40% keyboard. It's going to be a PCB. It's going to be like 8 Gretech Reds, if that's the name of those, and you're going to hate it, and you're not going to have caps on it, and you're going to be wondering why you ever got into the hobby with $30. So,
hey Nathan, I heard this guy say once that it was the Novel Keys creams.
Dude, I don't know, man. The canned creams, these box creams,
GMK Striker
with GMK Striker.
These box creams might be taking the regular creams out to lunch.
Keep raffle, by the way, soon. Get them all in one fell swoop.
Welcome, Mr. Nathan Kim. So, well, guys, let's unrelated question. Let's see. Given the massive growth of aftermarket prices, how do you guys feel about a third-party entity establishing a grading system for resale products? Never gonna happen.
Maybe. Who
Yeah,
knows?
And I mean, it could, but who's gonna listen to it,
Dude,
right?
Who's the
Beckett,
authority though?
Beckett, they're here in Dallas. They can just down the road. We'll take some keyboards over them. We'll be like, listen, hey, we're gonna grade this, and then we're gonna put it in a case, and it's gonna be a PSA 10 Key Colt number 2, and then it's gonna be worth, 80 grand.
$80 million. No,
Yeah, this ain't no Pokemon cards.
yeah,
No, it
exactly.
won't happen.
Grading system. It's two. There's two. How?
The
Yeah,
problem
it's not
with,
like they're all made in the same menu, right?
How
Same
could you-
process. That's not it.
well, the
We can't
problem
do
with
that.
grading is that when you're talking about cards, is that they become not usable anymore because in order to maintain
Oh, yeah.
said grade, they have to be stored in that exact condition that they were graded at. So
Mm.
like with
Yeah.
like I have a couple graded like sports cards, and like I have some like 9.5s, I have like 2 10s, and it's like the second you open that up, you crack that, it's no longer a PSA 10 or a BGS 10.
Yeah,
So that's why that will never happen.
true. There's no gold standard. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A $30 build is that taco build. Yeah. So, well, before we get to our last couple questions, I want to give a quick shout out to our awesome sponsors. You can go head on over to mechsondeck.omnitype.com. Omnitype is running GMK Norse. Very cool. Very
Chewy yes.
yeah, it's close to me.
Oh, wait.
It's close to me.
Or-
So be sure to check that out. They also have some other awesome stuff on that website, so
way.
be sure to check that out. We have Project Keyboards, mexondeck.project.link. GMK Astral announced that it will be running starting March 5th, so be sure to check out. This is a great looking set. And then, of course, candykeys.com/mexondeck. DSA 1930 running right now. The Icky 68.
Dude.
Just the weirdest named board, but you know what? We'll get over it. Great desk mats on there, some switches on there as well. So be sure to check out Canon Keys. We also have our awesome partners of Zap Cables, who makes the best cables. In our opinion, the best cables in the business. He's also got great desk mats and the bumper. You can get the bumper, which is what I am literally using right now, and I fucking love
awesome.
it. So be sure to check them out. We've got Type Beast, typebea.st. Check out Mech Madness 2021. Go get your brackets filled out. You have about a week and a half left. So go fill those out and subscribe to that newsletter. And then Smith and Rune, they just ran the Iron 165 Standard Edition. But keep an eye out. They've got some awesome stuff coming in 2021. So be sure to check on that. We usually end our streams with 2 questions. We'll change it up. I'll ask the first question, and then I'll let you ask the second. There we go. Change it up. What is your favorite and least favorite part of the hobby?
Oh man, this question.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I mean, nowadays I kind of take it a lot easier as far as like purchasing and all that goes. Right now, my favorite part is actually like streaming and like doing builds for people and kind of like sending them out and then being happy about it. That kind of stuff is right now like my favorite part. And just like interacting on a relatively daily basis with like a bunch of people I care about, and just like knowing how they're doing and all that stuff. That's really my favorite part right now. I think the worst part is just worst part of the hobby right now for me is like keeping track. It's just I mean, even like of course, like you guys have sponsors, I do too, right? And like even just checking like once a month what all these sponsors are doing each month is
It
like
usually takes.
I'm just like
it takes till the second week
wow.
of repeating it where you're like, okay, now I remember what's happening.
Yeah. So keeping track is hard, and more importantly, just because there's so much out there, I really don't like it when people ask me stuff that I can't answer to them. Like they come to me with questions that I can't answer. Of course, like because I try to be as resourceful as possible. I tend to feel pretty bad when I can't answer those questions. So I think that's kind of like the worst part for me. Of course, there's we could talk about flipping. We could talk all about that kind of growing pain stuff for the hobby. Uh, but I've talked a lot about that on like Keepcast, for example. We could we could certainly touch the topic, but I have a very specific views about that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I always feel bad whenever I'm like streaming a build or something, and or when we're doing this, and people are like, "Yeah, what do you think about this board?" And I'm like, I have no clue what that is.
Too hard to
And
keep up
it
nowadays.
happens way more than I feel
Yeah.
like it should, but it's just so
When
hard to keep up.
when we started Mechs on Deck, it was right before the bubble. It was right before the GMK explosion in April. We literally started in April of
Oh yeah.
2019, and April was the month that it exploded. And we were sharp on it. We did our research on, and we knew every damn thing that came out on Geek Hack. And I think by the end of 2019, both of us were like, it would either have to take too much part of our jobs of just staying on top of everything, or you're just not going to know things. And luckily, a lot of stuff gets asked in the Discord, like, "What do you think about this?" And I get to learn about that, but it's too big now to know what every single thing is. And
Yeah.
Top Clack used to do it, but then that became too much of a thing, and you know, it's tough. I respect that Huey continues to do This Week in Keyboards. Like, respect.
Yeah.
He's
It's
doing
very
a
impressive.
massive service to this hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but
the last question will be The Office or Parks and Recreation?
The Office. I think that's a no contest. Yeah.
Let's go.
no contest. There you go.
Yeah.
So I think we can all agree though that fuck the fact that they went to Peacock. Like, just let me watch it on Netflix.
Dude, Peacock just got like a new show that they're doing. Bill Nye the Science Guy show is coming back, and it's exclusively on Peacock.
Well, he was on Netflix because he did like a Netflix one, but it was like
Bill Nye.
not normal Bill Nye the Science Guy. It was like him like cursing a bunch and stuff. So what the fuck is Peacock exactly? So well, thank you. Thank you very much.
It's like thinking about Tidal, but alternative solutions for
NBC's
TV.
app. Let's like actually tell the people what it is, Chewy. It's NBC's streaming service.
It's a thing. It exists.
Yep.
It's the Netflix of NBC. Or the Apple TV of NBC. But Lightning Keyboards, thank you very, very much for joining us. Sorry, it's been a minute since we've talked about it months ago and then last week. So thank you very much. When can we see you?
When?
Yeah, when? Like when do you stream?
Oh, I see. I actually stream kind of irregularly. I don't have a fixed schedule. I normally stream evenings EST. I think I normally pretty much start anywhere between like 7 and 9 p.m. EST. I try to stream like 2 or 3 times a week. But pretty much for me, it's a very whack schedule because my work demands shift around a lot. Like I have deadlines at different times, and sometimes they actually just completely change depending on the meeting. So yeah, very, very, very irregular in that regard. But if you just if you're like in my Discord server and just ask me, or you can just PM me and say like, when's your next stream? I'll probably tell you more or less when that's gonna be. And I try to always tell people at the very end of each stream when the next thing's going to be. I actually have on my Discord server, I have like a list of like builds that I'm going to do, all that stuff. It gets updated pretty much live all the time. And I have a bunch of cool builds coming up soon. I mean, other than that, you'll probably see photos on like my Instagram, Lightning Keyboards. I also put them up on my website, lightningkeyboards.com. I usually post them, like cross post them across, like in different Discords, like the bigger ones. Like there's like Top Clack. Sometimes I post them on like Geek Cult. Sometimes I put like on types, on our custom keyboards, etc., etc. So yeah, you'll see my stuff out there. But as far as a schedule goes, I don't have one. But you could probably rely on me streaming evenings Eastern Time, US.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us, guys. If you just hit it a second ago, but ! Guest, go over there, hit that follow him on his Twitch. And thank you again. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming on the show. This Saturday, I will be building an MXSS keyboard for a good friend. Excited about that one.
That was
It's been a long time coming for that.
Yeah,
it's
It's
been a minute.
I'm like, I heard that years ago.
Yeah.
Keyword.
that was like that was the
that
first
was-
time I saw the purple colored PC was the MXSS.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It was the first one, actually, I think.
Yeah.
A lot. It was around the same time as the
This is not a
910.
purple one, sadly.
Yeah.
It's not one of the fancier ones, but it's still it's a chunk of polycarb. I love it. So thank you guys. There are a couple people who this is their first time watching the stream. Seether, one of them. Oh, Seether Zero, I think, was one of them. I hope you enjoyed your first episode. We've been asking, who do you want to raid? Who's live that you can see?
Oh, let's see.
Who do you want to raid?
Let me see who's currently live. Oh, I haven't seen this person live in such a long time. And I think it would be great if we rated them. Do you guys know Cruise Control? He does cables. He occasionally does builds, but he's a very cheerful guy. And I actually just like hearing him, talk about stuff. But I actually learned like some cable stuff from him, and so and I see that he's live. This is like the first time I seen live in so long, actually. So I think we should give him a raid. It's Cruise Control _TV.
Yeah,
I've got it set up.
So, well, thank you guys very, very much for coming out and watching. Let's go hit up Cruise Control. And let's see. I'm trying to go find it so that I can watch the fun stuff. But thank you very much to Lightning. We'll see you guys Saturday at noon. And buy a Switch test.